This year, Overwatch turns 5, and with Blizzcon Online 2021 coming up this week, it feels like the Overwatch community, and indeed Overwatch as a game, is in a bit of a transitional phase. I'm Hammeh. In this video, I'm going to be talking about my slight concerns as to how things are right now, what there is actually to be optimistic about, and how, ultimately, the future of Overwatch is going to be up to you. How is Overwatch right now? What will Overwatch be like after Blizzconline 2021 and in the run-up to Overwatch 2, whenever that's going to be? And how are we as a community going to be in the meantime? Hey and welcome. I'm Hammeh, and I have been making Overwatch videos for the best part of 5 or more years. In fact, since it was released and even before when it was announced at BlizzCon back in 2014, if you remember that. And since then, the Overwatch community has been through its ups and downs. Now, however active or not I have been, I specialise in lore, story, and things around the game mostly. I've never seen the community quite as down, quite as angry, and quite as stressed in some points as it has been over the last year. With Overwatch 2 news coming up at BlizzConline 2021, I just wanted to take a step back and see where we are right now, give some context and perspective. Of course, from my own viewpoint, your mileage may vary. Have a think about where we're going and how we should feel about that. Now, caveat emptor, buyer beware. Of course, it's my opinion from my perspective, and I fully encourage you to go and look and consider other people's perspectives as well. Time codes in the description below if you'd like to skip around. We'll be talking about things like how the Overwatch community feels right now to me, BlizzCon Online, what's probably going to happen there, and then what's probably going to happen afterwards as well. Not only from a perspective of how Overwatch might be as a game, but also how it might be as a community, including content creators, influencers, and everyone's perspectives. Last but not least, I'd like to finish on things I genuinely feel we can be positive about too. In here, there'll be my thoughts on wider content creation and social media in general right now. So take these as vibes and how I've been feeling in general. It's definitely not any picking out of any particular creators or even particular games or anything like that. Some of the things I talk about, I've kind of perceived or seen to be the case as trends across gaming communities in general or content creation in general, rather than specifically Overwatch. Firstly, how's Overwatch right now? Well, I think it's fair to say that the general vibe of the Overwatch community for a little bit has been, where's the content? What's happening? When is Overwatch 2 coming? Now, off the back of BlizzCon 2019, which I was very, very privileged to go to, disclaimer, paid for by Blizzard and similar, we saw the announcement of Overwatch 2, and Blizzard at that time said very, very directly, we're going to be going quiet. You're probably not going to be hearing anything else on Overwatch 2 until BlizzCon 2020.
We're going to be quiet. We are going to be quiet. We have a lot of work to do. The team is focused on Overwatch 2. That doesn't mean we are leaving the live service behind. There are still some cool updates coming. We want to add new stuff. Now, I want to get this out there right away. We are not adding a new Archives event to Archives this year, because we are focused on Overwatch 2. We feel like that's the better storytelling experience.
Well, one global pandemic later, and here we are. Now, Blizzard also said at that time that they weren't planning any more hero releases after Echo until Overwatch 2 either. So after the release of what turned out to be Echo, it's been a relatively quiet time. We've had some short stories. We've had the Tracer comic recently, and we've also had Kanazaka in terms of a deathmatch level, along with some teasers for Overwatch 2, or so the dev team have said. However, for a lot of people, this has been part of an ongoing, more quiet time where it's been quite, I'd say, almost becoming popular, or maybe even becoming a bit of a meme to say, oh, being an Overwatch player is tough, being part of the Overwatch community is tough, is Overwatch dead, etc., etc. Fast forward to the recent announcements on an Activision Blizzard earnings call in terms of company stuff, where it was said that neither Overwatch 2 nor Diablo 4 would be expected in this financial year of 2021. And the Overwatch community has been wondering, has been pondering, particularly amongst content creators, but also in general, as to, well, what's going to be happening now, given the pandemic? Is the policy of no big new content for Overwatch still going to continue? When will Overwatch 2 actually arrive? And what will the consequences for the community be? Will this lack of content, as it were, cause Overwatch to die. People have speculated about that a lot. Now, the Overwatch community, myself included, I am not going to say that I'm innocent or devoid from this, I've always had pretty high expectations, I think it's fair to say, of Blizzard. Now, a lot of the time, I feel personally that those have been met. I'm not also going to give Blizzard a completely free pass in this video, or indeed in my opinions. I also think at points that Blizzard have perhaps set expectations that they've wanted to deliver on in good faith, and perhaps haven't been able to. The reasons for that we can of course speculate on. I think for the mood of the community and for how Overwatch and Overwatch 2 may or may not succeed or may not be going forward, we've probably got to take a step back and take a little bit of what, from my perspective, is a bit of a reality check and just have a look at how the situation is right now. Now, if you look at Overwatch's announce back in 2014 to its release in 2016, when they had more probably of a polished game, and we know from panels how long Blizzard were working on Overwatch and how it got revamped from Titan behind the scenes. When Overwatch was announced at BlizzCon 2019 for Overwatch 2, it would have been very, very impressive and very unlikely if it was out last year. And in 2020, well, pandemic things happened. Big flailing hands gestures here from me. So for Overwatch 2 to still be out in 2021, I would go ahead and say that anyone saying that last year was being very, very optimistic at best. With the pandemic, with everything going on, I think it was pretty optimistic. And also, from BlizzCon 2019's announcement of Overwatch 2, there was a lot that was shown, but there was a lot more detail that was not shown. Really expecting Overwatch 2 in 2021 was very optimistic. So the fact that it's not going to be out this year, I don't think should be a big surprise to people. Of course, it's a disappointment to me. Of course, I would love Overwatch 2 out as soon as possible. But I think realistically, looking at past Blizzard announces to launches and their timelines, and plus the state of the world last year, that feels not a massive surprise to me. I don't know about you. Now, a lot of what people have been questioning and talking about a lot, particularly over 2020, is, well, where's the content, Blizzard? Where are the new heroes? Why are you continuing to do this? Why, if Overwatch 2 is not going to be out, why are you not creating any content until then? Why are you not talking about Overwatch 2 in the meantime? Now, of course, all people who love and play Overwatch want to see more new things for it, for sure, myself included. But there's been a lot of this also from content creators as well, in terms of wanting to have things to create content about. As much as people love the game, people also want to create content about the game because they love the game. Let's take that in good faith. And in general online discourse, I've seen this kind of frustration and question snowball and snowball and snowball and snowball. Again, I completely agree that question should be asked. With the pandemic, with Overwatch 2 being further away, should that be revisited? Should there potentially, if Blizzard can do it, the team is hiring. That's very obvious from job listings over the last year. The team is getting a lot bigger on Overwatch and Overwatch 2. Should there be new content? That's an absolutely fair question to ask, and hopefully we'll see some stuff about that maybe at Blizzconline. I'm hopeful for that. I think that would be good and positive for Overwatch. Big agreement there. What I would say to balance that out is that we have to remember the context of Overwatch's release, of what the Overwatch team have always said for years, for the last 5 years. When Overwatch was released, it was before Fortnite became big. It was before the Battle Pass became huge, and free-to-play shooters, Fortnite, Apex Legends, kicked off and took things in a different direction. Overwatch started out as being a full-priced game that we all bought, or that when people who bought it at launch bought. So remember, if you will, back years, the furore around the first anniversary event when people can get the dances, Blizzard increasing the amount of credits you could get, decreasing the chance of duplicates, doing a lot of tweaks, making sure that you could buy skins and things in the loot boxes for credits. Remember that Overwatch's current loot box was not how it used to be back when Overwatch had launched in the early days. Blizzard, whether or not you think that what they're doing now is right for the game, and of course everyone is entitled to their opinion, didn't set out for Overwatch, I think, at the beginning of things to be an ongoing, seasonal, microtransactional driven game. Remember, these are all things that came in afterwards. Remember, there was no hero limit, where you could have 2 Winston, 2 Lucio and 2 Genji being a very early composition in Overwatch. Remember, no competitive mode when Overwatch was first launched, and all of the things that came in, the glories of the first competitive season of Overwatch and how chaotic that was, with all of the weird and wonderful compositions. But I digress. The point of this context is to say that Overwatch released in a different generation of gaming. It then came into a new generation of gaming, Fortnite, Apex Legends, many of the games, many of the content release cycles that people like to compare Overwatch to today, and it had to decide how it was going to adapt or react. Blizzard had to decide this. They tried different things. We can look with hindsight, captain hindsight, on whether those were the right or the wrong things for the game. I think where we are now, for context, is that Blizzard along that journey had a decision to make. They had to say, we're going to try and compete in this new world on the same footing, at the same cadence, or we're going to do something different. And that something different to me was Overwatch 2. They said, are we going to try and do a Fortnite Apex Legends style regular new cadence of loads of new stuff? Or are we going to have a regular annual events? Or are we going to do new stuff and add things to them differently? And at some point, are we going to draw a line and say, right, we're making something else? Now, this is what Blizzard, I think, have tried to do. It's what, when they came to us at BlizzCon Online and said, we're going to redefine the sequel of Overwatch 2, we're going to have a game where people who already own Overwatch can come along for the competitive ride and continue to play the game just with some effectively visual differences, and the story mode and the hero missions and all of the PvE side is going to be the thing that people will essentially pay for. They made that decision. And when they made that decision, they decided to go into development and dial things down on Overwatch, the game, for a bit. Now, we can argue as to whether that was the right decision or whether now that was maybe a decision that needs to be revisited. However, I still think now that however much the community, however much content creators, or however much we as players, whichever hat you wish to put on, or however you see yourself with regards to Overwatch, this is where we are. This is what is happening. And maybe or maybe not, there'll be a decision around releasing some more Overwatch content. But if there isn't, it's still where we are. And it's still where Blizzard decided to draw a line before the pandemic. So there may not be too much changing this. So I want to just give that context and give that opinion. And if that's not going to be changed, then we should probably set ourselves up in a way and say, look, if this is how things are, how are we going to do the best that we can do? And how are we going to enjoy things the best that we can do? So if this is how things are going to be, then I do feel that there is recently, or maybe over the last half year or so, it's almost become the standard narrative to criticize. Now, criticism can be very, very constructive. You can quite happily constructively criticize me in the comments below. You can say, you know what, Hammeh, I don't like your face cam. I don't think it really adds to the video. I think that it's better just to hear your voice. I think that you get distracted. I think you don't present well on camera. That's constructive criticism. That's absolutely fine. I appreciate that a lot. I hope that's not how you feel, but if it is, that's totally fine. Saying, Hammeh, your face cam sucks. That's criticism, but it's not constructive. I feel that it's almost become a bit of a meme. Fair enough, memes happen. I feel that it's almost become just standard for the course that digging into Overwatch is a bit easy. And of course, because it's had a very, very good history. Let's not forget how big Overwatch was. And this is when I come to sort of realism and context. I don't think any game meteorically rises and keeps rising and then stays at a height forevermore. I think there's maybe one game that's stayed hugely popular in that vein, and that's Minecraft, right? In terms of, and I'm sure Minecraft had a peak, and then it still continued going along as a very, very big game, a very, very loved game, a very, very content created and covered game, and much more besides. Maybe CSGO, Counter-Strike Global Offensive, that's been doing very, very well for a long time. Not many games rule forever, at the height of their glory forever. Look at Fortnite, which everyone said would kill Overwatch at some point. Apex Legends is doing very well for itself. Fortnite is doing very well for itself. And other games will be released that will do very well for themselves too. I do think that when some people get down on Overwatch, that it's generally coming from a few different places that I will discuss. I think one of them is definitely nostalgia. I think one of them is maybe from definitely a wish for the glory days, as it were, and perhaps not looking at where Overwatch realistically is now and why that isn't a bad thing. And also, I'm going to call this a sense of like slight anger and fear. When I was trying to write the script for this video, I was actually reminded a bit of the 5 stages of grief, and I thought, well, actually, at some points, the Overwatch community has gone through all of those 5 stages of grief. If you take those 5 stages of grief as being denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, maybe people have gone through them at different stages, and I'm hoping we're getting perhaps to the acceptance of those 5 stages of grief for Overwatch not being what it was. I don't think it was ever going to be what it was at its height forever, but that doesn't mean it isn't doing okay now, and that doesn't mean that it can't be great and big and wonderful again in the future. My main concern and reason for making this video is I'm a little concerned that as a community, as players, and then also as content creators and things similarly, we could actually hamstring that from happening if we don't take a step back and just take some context and just take a step back and review everything. So to BlizzCon Online, well, what will we realistically get? We're going to get probably a little bit of courage in the opening ceremony, and then there's the one panel of, I think, 30 or 40 minutes. Now, a lot can come in a 30 or 40-minute panel. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. As of yet on Twitter, I haven't seen any questions or any announcements or calls for any questions for an Overwatch Q&A. So I'll have to double check that. Doesn't look as though there's going to be an Overwatch Q&A right now. I hope we will get more news on systems, scope, and the depth of the game. Like, how is replayability going to work for the hero missions? Maybe more news on that. Once I've played these story missions, what is my incentive to replay them on a weekly basis, perhaps? Now, if you've seen the challenge modes in Archives and in Halloween, if I've done a 20-minute video in the past that I'll link in the description below on how I think that Overwatch may attempt to replicate the seasonal dungeon system of World of Warcraft and Diablo, the Mythic Plus model, effectively time trials with those challenge modes that you've seen in Overwatch, things like Molten Floor becoming affixes that rotate on a weekly basis. We'll see on that, though. We might get an animated short, and that'd be very, very cool. And of course, I will be covering all of the lore and announcements and things from Blizzconline on the channel right here. We maybe will get some news on new heroes, perhaps, for Overwatch 2, new characters, things, which would be really, really exciting too. And maybe, just maybe, and this is a big if, maybe there'll be some news on something alpha or beta playable this year as testing. I would not expect a release date at this stage. And if we got anything like that, maybe they just put a year on it rather than anything else. So if that is what we're going to get, well, what will it mean? We'll certainly get a good sense, to me, as to where Overwatch 2 is actually at. There were a lot of questions at BlizzCon 2019, a lot of questions. And at that time, and I'll be honest with you, the game was and is in development. I don't think Blizzard had all the answers. I think they had an idea of where they were trying to go, and you could see that. And a lot of people have speculated, myself included, and extrapolated off that. We'll see with what they do say and what they don't say this year at BlizzConline, where that's going, and we'll get a lot. I just think this presentation that we see will be great in terms of seeing where they're at and where they're not at, what they've done and the ideas that they have and what is still to come. We will really, I think, get a good sense of where Overwatch 2 is from this BlizzConline. And what is not said will be as important as what is said. Now, I'm optimistic. I'm supportive. I want Overwatch 2 to be a great game. Games can be in development for many, many years, and they can still have problems. As much as I love the IP, just look at the wall behind me in the game. Obviously, the launch of Cyberpunk recently has been an example of that. And I really wish that game to be patched and done up and to be the best it can be, because it does many, many things absolutely amazingly. I do think, however, and this is where some of my concern has come from, I do think, though, that given the mood of the Overwatch community over the last 6 months, and I'm saying the mood, I'm talking about Twitter, I'm talking about Reddit, I'm talking about YouTube and things like that. And we have to remember as well that that is a small subsection of the overall Overwatch community. People who have played Overwatch. If you post on Twitter, if you post on Reddit, if you post comments, or if you watch YouTube videos like this one right now, then you are more than likely in the topmost engaged set and number and a smaller percentage of players than the wider Overwatch playbase. It's the same as people who engage in competitive. Most Overwatch players probably do not engage in competitive, and if they do, they're certainly not engaging in the high levels of competitive. This is always a debate that's come up when people debate about balance of the game, and pros talking about balance, and then content creators talking about balance. Are the things that a pro is complaining about reflective of what a content creator is talking about? If that content creator is not a pro, are they reflective of what the wider Overwatch player base are? You know, is someone in bronze when GOATS was popular, the 3 tank, 3 support composition way back when? Is that bronze player having problems with GOATS in the same way that a Grandmasters player is? Do platinum or gold players even see problems with GOATS? I throw that in there because I feel that knowing the different perspectives and knowing that the conversation of certain people, myself included, and the very fact that you're watching this is probably on a more engaged level with Overwatch than the vast majority of the player base or people who bought the game, is always worth remembering, because echo chambers online are very much a thing. With that in mind, my concern is that with the announcement of Overwatch 2's new news at this Blizzconline coming up at the end of this week, you're never going to please everyone. So my concern a little bit is how we as a community move on from here, regardless of what this news is. Now, the news could be fantastic and it could delight everyone, and I'd love that. I think that whether or not they announce a release date, whether or not they talk about releasing new content for Overwatch, the existing game, there are going to be concerns unless Blizzard absolutely knock it out of the park. So before that happens, I wanted to talk about the different perspectives that I'd kind of seen come out here. One of them, as I said, was kind of like the sadness and nostalgia, and you see that with people's content and tweets and things. Overwatch is not the size and activity that it was at its peak after it had launched in those glory times. Was it always going to be at that point? Probably not. Was Overwatch, for you, always going to be a game that you wanted to log into every day, every couple of days, played for hours and hours on end, like you did when it was at its height? Or have you joined since that height, and did you miss that height? Have you joined Overwatch over the last couple of years? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to know your thoughts on that, by the way. All games have a boom phase. Overwatch had a big boom, and then they enter a stability phase, and then they may enter a quieter phase or a ticking along phase, depending on content release and the players in the activity base. And there are games that have done that for years. No one complains in CSGO that there hasn't been a new gun or agent, and I know that Overwatch is a hero shooter. I know that the comparison there, by me, is not exactly fair. But games can tick along and do very well for a very good period of time. No game is exponentially growing or the biggest game in the world forever. Fortnite is not like that anymore. Apex was huge and is doing just fine. Fortnite was huge and is doing just fine. I feel that Overwatch is huge and is doing just fine, but of course, more content everyone would appreciate. And Overwatch 2 is the big question mark for everyone else. People know that Apex will be going on the way it is unless something major changes. People know that Fortnite will be going on the way it is unless something major changes. Overwatch has the question mark of Overwatch 2 that is hanging over us in a good way. It's sort of sitting there just out of reach for a lot of people looking forward to new things. And it's also been given as the reason for the quiet of Overwatch right now. Just because Overwatch isn't as big as it used to be, that doesn't mean that it's dying. And it doesn't mean that it can't be healthy for years to come. My little concern is that we as a community, and whether it's people who play it, whether it's talking about it online, whether it's making Overwatch the butt of all the jokes, or whether it's content creators like myself, or anyone else for that matter, that we don't make it a continuous cycle of criticism about Overwatch. When there are things to be criticised, by all means criticise. This is not saying don't criticise Blizzard. This is not saying don't criticise Overwatch. This is not giving Blizzard a free pass for every decision that they make in any way, shape or form. But if you care about something, it's nice to try and support it. And continuously criticising it, sometimes constructive criticism is useful. Continuous criticism can, depending on how long it goes on for, can perhaps become unconstructive. And I think that's a good thing that everyone, myself included, can look at. I think there's a piece as well in terms of looking at discourse and mood where people are frustrated, and that frustration can come from caring. They want this to be great. They want the game to be enjoyable for them and for other people too, and they wish to share that, and they wish change to happen. And whether it's people talking on the forums, people talking on Reddit, Twitter, YouTube comments, Twitch stream chat, etc., any of those different places. I again sort of come back to this point of, discourse and conversation and criticism and positive suggestions for improvement are all well and good. There is just a point where whenever you're looking at anything to do with Overwatch or anything online, just remember you're looking at the viewpoints probably of the most active and engaged, and where people are active and engaged may not represent. If you only watch my channel, you might think that lore is the most important thing about Overwatch. It's not. Overwatch is many different things to different people. If you watch Overwatch League and you're keen on esports, then the opinion of the casters or the opinion of pros as to the balance of the game and heroes might be very, very important to you. If you're playing in bronze, then how the game feels there might be most important to you. If you're in plat or grandmaster, different perspectives. You log in every event and you play and earn your loot boxes, and you have some fun with friends and you leave. And that's what Overwatch is to you. Just remember that the content that you watch is always from a certain perspective. And always, if you're watching it as content or you're participating in discourse online in any wider forum, it's always going to be amongst the most active percentage and the smallest percentage of what is an overall much larger player base with a lot of different feelings and needs. Now, last but not least, and I won't dwell on this one for too long, but there is also, in some of the discourse I've seen, kind of a sense of, I'm going to call it fear, or maybe not fear, but also disappointment. It's this feeling of that people want a constant, they want something to be good, and they want to and look to Overwatch for that. Now, as I've said, Overwatch is 5 years old this May. The world has been a pretty stressful and fearful place, more so than average, over 2020, with the pandemic and everything going on. And I'm saying that I know from a place of great privilege. In terms of my position in life, it's relatively stable, and I know that for many other people out there, last year has been a lot more stressful than it has been for me in many, many ways. So I'm in no place judging or undermining how anyone feels right now with regards to the stress in the world. But there is a fear as well around, or a sort of, an uncertainty around wanting Overwatch to be something that perhaps it has never been, almost, or it used to be and now realistically is not going to be right now. I do see this in sort of online conversation, in some online content, wondering what Overwatch will be for the future, and almost this sort of concern, almost like a fear, almost desperation that it won't be what people want it to be, or it won't be what it was in the past. Now, I want Overwatch 2 to be amazing. I just think it's important to take a step back, and in the same way as earlier I said that do people want Overwatch to be the game that they play and do nothing else but for the rest of their life? That's a big over exaggeration, right? But I think there's a mindset where it's saying, you know what, Overwatch can be a game that can have a healthy and long life that we can all enjoy in different ways for a very long time, and we can step into, and we can step back from, and we can get re-engaged with when we want, and we can enjoy when we want, and we can enjoy Overwatch 2 when it comes, and we can accept to a point that that's perhaps how things are going to be, and whether or not that matches up with what we personally want, and whether or not that matches up with what Blizzard are actually doing, if that makes sense. I just think it's important to have that separation mentally in some ways. Now, one thing I'll quickly do is address this from a content creator perspective. There was a period of time where creating Overwatch content was most of my work and was most of my life. Now, I've never been 100% a full-time content creator. I've always freelanced. I've done some consultancy. I've been in full-time jobs. And indeed, when Overwatch was kicking off, I was working full-time in many ways. So I do, from a pure content creator perspective, understand having a concern about a game that you are making content around when it is the only thing that you make content around. Now, I traditionally have been a lore creator, although I've dabbled in other things, right? So I was doing a niche of a particular game, and Overwatch lore has been generally pretty quiet for the last year or maybe longer. So I understand that particular perspective. I'm not saying that any fear or uncertainty in community discourse is specifically because of this to do with content creation, but if there is any, then I get it. I really do get it. I know that's a very niche area, and I'm not saying that any sort of fear, concern is all driven by that very, very niche area of content creators and their backfiring cards relationship with Overwatch. But what I would say is that I think that whatever comes out of BlizzCon Online, it's not going to please everyone. There will be people very, very vocal about this, and they have every right to do so, and that's their relationship with Overwatch, not mine, and I'm not judging it. But what I would say is that we all have to get used to the fact that BlizzCon Online is not going to give us everything we want for Overwatch 2 or Overwatch, and to a degree, we're just going to have to see how it plays out. And if we love Overwatch, and if we care about Overwatch, and it's something that we want to see thrive and flourish, and we want to see more of it, it's good to support it. It's not giving Blizzard a free pass for every decision that they make, but it's good to be supportive, and it's good to try and see the positives, and it's good to try and move forward and enjoy what there is and give whatever's going to come a chance to happen, rather than perhaps trip it up before it gets out of the starting gate, which with a continuous discourse of criticism, perhaps for decisions that have already been made and that can't be reversed, there is a danger of effectively, throwing oil into the water and muddying the water and dirtying the water a bit and giving Overwatch 2 not really a chance to show us what it's actually made of. And I'll end my thoughts on that piece by just saying, in general, in terms of, I understand the concerns for Overwatch the game currently. I get it. I'm an Overwatch content creator. I'd love more things to talk about. I get very much people having concerns about game balance and things like that, and no hero releases, no map content. Blizzard have been tweaking the game, and in the absence of new content or fresh content to talk about, game balance gets a laser-like spotlight. Competitive always gets a laser-like spotlight, and people will create content and discuss and talk about these things because there's nothing else to talk about. And whether it's players of the game, whether it's competitive players, whether it's content creators, everyone across the spectrum, from Overwatch League casters through to someone who jumps into competitive for a golden gun every season, playing in bronze to gold, playing in the absolute, medium, or to be quite honest, the largest section of players will not be playing in Grandmaster, or may not be even playing in competitive when it comes into people logging into Overwatch on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. I just wanted to sort of sign off with a thought about beyond content creation, beyond the Overwatch community, just social media and content in general. Now, echo chambers in social media are very much a thing. If you use Twitter and you follow and talk about Overwatch on Twitter, you're definitely in a very small percentage of the overall Overwatch player base. You are hyper engaged with Overwatch if you do that. If you watch YouTube videos like this, as I said before, or follow Twitch streams, compared to the overall size of the Overwatch account base, install base, bought game base, you are hyperactive in your interest. You are overactive. You are over indexed, I should say, in terms of you're one of a small percent of people who are very, very engaged with the game. It used to be an online customer service thing where if everything goes well with a product, then out of 10 people, 9 people won't say it's gone well, but one person will log in and comment and say, "Oh, this is a great product." If the product is terrible, then 9 out of 10 people will log in and comment to say, "Oh, it's going terribly," and one person may not. So that was an old online customer service adage from somewhere where I used to work, but it is true, and it gives you context as to I'm going to call it the silent majority, or the majority of people beyond any very, very active, very, very engaged section of any community, or any let's say user base, player base, or anything like that. Now, Twitter will pigeonhole you, and if people are being down on something, if you're seeing a community down on something, then echo chambers can very, very easily form. Reddit can be such an echo chamber as well, depending on where you go. Twitter can be too. You can go into your Twitter settings and see the list of personalizations as to what Twitter has decided you have liked based on what tweets you look at, on what tweets you click, on what topics you may have clicked follow on people you have followed and their interests. And you can very quickly see yourself being fed the same opinions over and over. Facebook too. And this has been causing problems, I think, for the last couple of years outside the little world of Overwatch and the community online, and in things as big as politics and general life in many countries in the world. But stepping away from the even bigger issues for a second, I would just say that remember that social media, remember that content creation, remember that Reddit and all of the places will to a degree be echo chambers, with algorithms that will feed you content based on what you're consuming. So if you're feeling good, you might feel even better. If you're not feeling great about something, then you might actually be made to feel worse about it than things actually are. It works both ways, is what I'm saying. So I'm not saying that how you're feeling is wrong. I'm not telling you how to think or feel. I'm just saying that remember the context of the content, of the conversation, and of the communication that you are having, be it around Overwatch or around something far more important in your life when it's online, because the internet and social media can very much make things feel better or worse than perhaps they actually are. So sometimes taking a step back, taking a look at things over time, getting different people's opinions is a very, very good thing. And with all of this, please do go and ask other people other than me. Don't take what I say for gospel. It is one man's opinion from one point in the world and one lifetime and one experience. So, to conclude, I'm not writing Blizzard a pass. All I'm saying is if we enjoy Overwatch and we'd like to see it succeed, then we can all play a part in that by supporting it, by being constructive in our criticism, by being positive where we can be. That's not being fan people, not refusing to tell the Emperor when they are wearing no clothes. But it is just being mindful of context, of taking a step back and of saying, look, are things as bad as they feel? Are there other reasons that might be causing that? Being down on Overwatch has become a meme at points, and of course everything becomes a meme at points. But equally, there has been, in the quiet that there has been, particularly over the last year, which was a tough year in many different ways, in absence of content compared to what people think content release schedule should be, whether that's a fair comparison or not. And I will say that Blizzard have invited comparison or wanted to be seen to be playing in that space. Take, as I said, for example, the launch of loot boxes. I want to end on a positive note though. Overwatch is still a great game. When you play it, I have a great time solo queuing it, sometimes with friends, whether in competitive or whether in quick play with the heroes. And with the game experience, when things go right, it's a competitive buzz. It's a fun, good time with friends that you just cannot have anywhere else in quite the same way when it feels good. The game experience, the combinations, the heroes. I mean, the world. I love my lore, I love my story and storytelling. There's a whole rich world there ripe to explore that has only had the surface scratched of it. Having Christy Golden following in Michael Chu's footsteps with short story writing recently with the Symmetra short story, and having her working on Overwatch is absolutely brilliant too. There's going to be a McCree and Ash-centric novel out this year, following up on the Hero of Nimbani. More good stuff to come for Overwatch, and there's a whole world that can be explored. Animation, art, cartoons, comics, fan fiction, cosplay. Like, Overwatch inspired a community of people who would never normally engage with a team shooter or maybe even games in a way that no other game has done, certainly in recent memory. And since many communities and games have wished to inspire, imitate, or have moved on from Overwatch 2, and maybe they'll come back with Overwatch 2, we'll see. But there is a lot that Overwatch has given us. And personally, Overwatch has given me I'm going to get all soppy and say some really good friendships. It's got me to meet people, go places and experience things for me that I never thought. If you said to me 5 years ago when I was sitting making Hearthstone and Heroes of the Storm videos and streaming to 4 or 5 people on Twitch, many of whom still watch me today, thank you very much, you folks, I never would have thought that these things would have been possible. So Overwatch has given us a lot. And I think it's very easy to forget that sometimes. It has been a quieter than relative year and a half or so for Overwatch. I know that has, whether you're a content creator, whether you're a pro, whether you're a fan, whether you're a player, whether you log in for events and play arcade, or whether you play competitive all day and all night, I know that has been concerning for people. Overwatch 2 may still be a way off yet. And to conclude, I feel, as I said at the beginning of this video, that the future of Overwatch is in your hands. It is in our hands. I think it's in our hands in the sense that how we move on, how we react to BlizzCon Online, and how we move on from here as to how we approach our attitude to the game and how things go towards Overwatch 2 could help a lot. If we're positive, then positivity will spread positivity. If we're continuously negative, then outside, if people are considering Overwatch as a game, then that shows. And if people are looking at a game and what they see coming up on YouTube is Overwatch dying every 5 minutes, if they go to the Overwatch subreddit and all they see is negativity, if they Google things about Overwatch and all they see is bad, then negativity can breed negativity too. So I'd say in conclusion that if we like Overwatch and it's something we want to succeed, we don't have to stop being critical. We don't have to stop contributing ideas and suggestions as to how things we feel that can be improved, but just be mindful of how we do it. And let's not forget the wider context of things, of all of the games out there that have their natural highs, that have their natural drops down from the high, and then they go on just at a perfectly good level and a perfectly good angle and have a perfectly good and healthy community for months, years, in some cases decades to come. And Overwatch can be that. Let's not get in the way of that for what might be, in comparatively things, a short-term period, even though it doesn't feel it, a shorter term period of a bit more quiet and a bit more ups and downs. So that was a bit longer than I thought. How do you feel about Overwatch right now? What would you like to see from BlizzCon Online? How do you feel about Overwatch 2? What do you feel about anything in this video? Has Overwatch given you great times? How do you play Overwatch right now? I'd love to hear all of your thoughts in the comments below. If you like this video, do throw a like and subscribe. It's cliche, but it really does help. Do check out all of my Overwatch lore, interactions, voice lines. There are loads of playlists here. And a big shout to my patrons on Patreon. My Patreon's actually been paused for about a year, but those folks there who have supported me over the last 5 or so years have made a lot of my videos and definitely have made this video possible. So thank you very much. If you'd like to see how you can support my channel from just $1, pound, credit, coin to your Witcher a month, you can check out patreon.com/Hammeh. And above everything else, stay happy, look after yourself, look after your folks. I hope you're all doing well in what's a very stressful and tough year, but things are going to be getting better. I firmly believe that, whether it's out in the world or they're in the world of Overwatch. So if things feel tough, take a step back, take a deep breath, have a look at the context of things, and I can guarantee you that hopefully you'll feel a bit better. Cheers for tuning in. I've been Hammeh. Take it easy.